Welcome back to the State of Streaming podcast. Today's episode is actually a replay of a recent LinkedIn Live webinar with Jean Carucci, the streaming strategy scholar. The reason for the webinar is to cut through the chaos of streaming TV headlines to narrow it down to the 5 most important things every media buyer should know about streaming TV. You'll hear us mention registering to receive Jean's top 5 questions that every media buyer should ask. And since this is a replay of that webinar, we made it easy to get. Go to the show notes or the description wherever you're listening to this, and we put a link right at the top to make it easy to find. So do that. Grab Jean's top 5 questions to ask in the show notes or the description of this episode, and enjoy the full conversation that accompanies it so you can be the most prepared buyer in the room. Now, without further ado, enjoy. Jean, this is going to be a fun one because I think there's a lot of fun speculating about who is going to buy who and what's it going to mean and what's going to look like. That's fun. That is all fun. And Jim Cramer loves talking about it on Mad Money. But for media buyers, it presents a whole mess of trouble. We're going to talk about some of that today. In the lead up here, we'll look at kind of the last 10 years or so of M&A in streaming. But right. Why is this topic so near and dear to your heart? Why is this so important to you?
So I started in the streaming ecosystem right at its infancy, probably just shy of that chart in the show. And what I found fascinating was back then, media plans were always like, you're going to start with linear and you're going to add digital to extend your reach. And at that point, it was called TV everywhere. But I'm new audience. It was a new inventory. It was a new way to sell to them and create ad products. And now, very quickly, it's to you're starting in streaming and adding linear to extend your reach. That's blowing, right? So why it's near and dear to me is I've got to be up to date on this to stay relevant, continue to offer expertise and compete in this place. And I think that there's so much information there that people are inundated with it, can't absorb it. So I'm committed to kind of studying it and to understand. But I think, we'll talk about these mergers and these acquisitions. Streaming grew and grew and grew, more and more subscribers, but now we've sort of just traded off subscribers, right? And when we do that, mergers and acquisitions happen, right? So there's just so many people who are going to subscribe to so many streamers. There's got to be a point of diminishing returns. And now, how do I keep those subscribers? Therein lies the challenge for these large media companies, right? That's why we're in this state. And I don't think it's going away at a time soon.
We've got a piece out today on stateofstreaming.com about exactly what you just said, right? These audiences are moving and shifting, times M&A, times all of the challenges. You've defined 5 specific challenges for media buyers that we'll look at today, but this is a revolving door that we experience as consumers, and it creates really dramatic impact for the brands that we're buying advertising on behalf of. So we're talking all about M&A and what it means for you on the buy side. Jean, take us back in time. This is like an awesome visual. You've got a great Substack that we can point folks to if they want to learn more about the streaming ecosystem and what it all means for media buyers. But take us through this trip down memory lane. What is this that we're looking at here?
So what we're looking at here is what I'll say, right? The streaming world exploded, right? 2019 was what I like to call the plethora of plus era. Lots of large media companies decide we need a direct-to-consumer app, and for whatever reason, they all named it Plus. For I don't know why, but they just did. And on top of that, what happened was we had a global pandemic, right? So right after Disney Plus launched, Apple TV launched, we had lockdown, and now people are in their home and they're just streaming and streaming. So now everybody sort of jumped into it from a direct to consumer standpoint. So that's kind of the beginning of the explosion. That's the first thing that happened. The second thing that happened was very large media companies started grabbing what we call fast channels, those free ad-supported television networks like Pluto that was acquired by Viacom, that is now Paramount. Comcast acquired Zumo. Fox acquired Tubi. This is all about scale and eyeballs, right? People wanted to watch. What do they want? When they want to, and sometimes, but they were fine with ads. So now we had scale that happened there, right? The next thing that happened as more and more entered into the marketplace is those streamers that came in with no ads introduced ads. Shockingly, Netflix said, yeah, you know what? We're going to have an ad tier. So in 2022, Disney Plus said, you know what? We're going to have an ad tier. So they added it as well, right? So now we have all the plus ones direct consumer. We're grabbing up these fast channels. Now we're laying in ads in place that were not literally there before, including Prime Video. This past year, what happened was we leaned into what I like to call the sports scale bundles, right? So you saw Fox launch Fox One. ESPN launched their limited one. So, specific focus on live sporting events. And of course, right now, in the middle of a drama, and drama is the word here with a capital D, of Warner Brothers Discovery and the will they or won't they between Netflix and Paramount. So that's really sort of what happened. You had an explosion of apps direct to consumer. And now what we're seeing is instead of trading off between subscribers, now we're trying to increase our base by acquiring, right? These are mergers and acquisitions that have been happening.
Awesome. And behind the scenes, Comcast quietly split into NBCU and Versant. At the same time, we've been distracted with Netflix, Paramount, WBD, and all of the drama that's happening there. We know that streaming is how we watch TV, but how much has this changed over the last 12 months? This is Nielsen's gauge. Most recently in December, streaming accounting for 47.5% of that other. It's a lot of VMVPD. It's a lot of live linear broadcast style content access through streaming apps. When you look at this, what are you thinking? What does this mean to you?
I think this kind of demonstrates why everyone wants a piece of the stream pie, because you've got to follow the eyeballs, right? So what we see here on the left-hand side is when the gauge from Nielsen first emerged, which was in May of 2021. You can see that in 4 short years, 80% growth in what we're calling streaming viewership happened, right? That's astronomical. And the number of direct-to-consumer jumps from what we are putting here is 5 to 12. But truthfully, Tim, there are hundreds of direct-to-consumer streamers that are out there that are in that quote-unquote other category here. So, what it is large media companies say, this is how viewers want to engage with their content. We have to be part of it. And this actually shows a migration to streaming, right? And even though it's doubled in percentage, so have the competitors. That goes back to what you and I were talking about in the beginning, right? Have we approached this point of diminishing returns where there's so much growth that can happen? So now to continue to keep your leadership position, you must acquire your competitor, quite frankly, increase your subscriber base, media buyers, more importantly, your scale and what you can offer there.
When we look at this on a household basis, and we use census numbers for this as a kind of a directional source of truth, 135 million US households, 128.5 million households connected to the internet, just about everyone's streaming. So when we think about scaled reach, streaming really is that direct consumer opportunity for brands. And looking at this kind of global M&A landscape, when we get outside of just the United States, what do you see here?
So this just goes, I think 2025 was the year of consolidation. So prior to this, we were growing, introducing, launching, now acquiring. And you can see that not here in the US. You see powerhouse brands like Disney finally taking over all of Hulu, in addition to our virtual MVPs like Fubo. But you see Roku, which was literally at hardware, getting into acquiring content there. From a global perspective, you can see, all around from Europe to Australia, it's about consolidation, right? So 2025, in my mind, was the beginning of this year of consolidation. And all we've heard at the end of the year and the very first quarter here is how it's doing, especially here in the US with these powerhouse brands here.
Awesome. Let's start to look at what those challenges are that are presented. We're going to use the WBD, Netflix, Paramount example, but really this could be anyone. And surely it's going to be lots of different names and logos that we've already talked about here. But this is the merger we're all talking about. What are the high level talking points that we see here?
So I think, it's a long time for being solved here, who is going to own whom. But I like this chart. It gives an understanding of the assets that people are literally bidding on, right? So I won't go into all of them there, but you can break them down into each one of these entities has a deep library of original programming, right? Must watch. I got to have this app to actually watch this kind of programming here. Each one of these also has film franchises that they can rely on, right? That are in theater, but more importantly, deep libraries that you can see. They also have a significant amount of what I'll bucket as news and reality, sometimes on just a show basis, but more often than not, entire networks that concentrate on this content. Each one of them is leaning into kids and animation. So now you're broadening from just adults sort of content there, but it's an entire family can participate and watch it. Each one has sports rights. This is such an important part of this deal, I think, because live sports is what the number one engaging content that you're seeing on streaming. And that's been a big part of this sort of land grab over the last couple of years. Each of these companies has their own sort of league affiliations there. And finally, while we don't talk about it a lot, I think the gaming IP that it's available at each is something to keep an eye on. And each one of them offers some significant sort of devotion to that. I think over the next few years, we're going to be leaning into gaming from an advertising standpoint. So you need to own that IP to kind of be part of that next iteration for advertisers. So this is just a nice little snapshot of what each one of these companies offers.
Great snapshot. We played Pictionary on Netflix at Thanksgiving and had a blast. It was so much fun. I can see the gaming being a big, big piece of this as we go forward. All right. So what are the obstacles? What are the opportunities presented by these big mergers?
So just to level set here, I want everybody to remember that of these two mergers, Netflix and Warner Brothers is only about the film and streaming assets only, does not include their very deep endemic, what we'll call cable networks. For Paramount and Warner Brothers Discovery, they are bidding on literally the entire company there. So I think that's really important for us to remember as we go into each one of these obstacles and opportunities for advertisers. So if we go to the first one, I think it kind of hits on what the primary obstacle for advertisers is. And what it is For Netflix and Warner Brothers Discovery, what you're going to get is limited premium inventory. Premium, no doubt. Each one of these companies has an ultra light ad load, right? For streaming, it's 4 to 6 minutes. That will severely limit the number of ad slots available. And I would question the scale you're going to get for each one of those. So yes, very premium content, but it's limited. Paramount and Warner Brothers Discovery, on the other hand, has a lot of inventory, but I would say that at this point, it's fragmented. It will require 2 separate ad platforms. And when that happens, for advertisers, there are going to be different requirements for the metadata and how you buy. And more importantly, for advertisers, you may need to have different creative versions. They're going to have 2 separate platforms for quite a while. So first obstacle is about inventory, whether it's limited or it's fragmented. That's the first obstacle for these scenarios, quite frankly.
Feels like a big one. That's generally right where the planning kind of starts. Like, what can I buy?
And we'll talk about this later. And this is one of the most important questions. As an advertiser, you need to remember going into any upfront when there's a merger available. It's about inventory. Is it limited? Is it fragmented? How can we solve it?
Let's talk about opportunity number 2.
Yeah. So the second is all about ad scale and data. Okay. So for Netflix and Warner Brothers Discovery, I can assure you that those will be very high CPMs. Remember, it's already limited. So they're going to be high CPMs. And I would call their data murky. Again, I say this because I've been on that side pitching it out to advertisers, right? Let's remember that Netflix has really provide published subscriber numbers. They gave us overt subscriber numbers just this past one. They have traditionally relied on monthly active viewers, and that actually just inflates the household reach number, right? Warner Brothers Discovery, HBO Max, averages between 8 to 10 million subscribers. See, no doubt about that, but not nearly as large as some of the competitors, right? So that would be sort of the ad scale limitations, I'd say. And from a data perspective, I don't know how transparent it's being. For Paramount and Warner Brothers Discovery, massive high volume reach, no doubt. Remember, it's the entire company there, right? You're combining linear and streaming. You're going to offer huge reach, right? More volume options and more endemic inventory. We're going to talk about that in a minute. I think because it's not a unified planning process, and it won't be for a while, I question the duplicated reach, and I really think that frequency cap's going to be a problem, right? Am I reaching the same people with the same ad over and over again? Anybody who's streamed had been inundated with the same ad in 1 hour knows how frustrating that can be, right? So it's either high CPMs, murky data, mass reach, and high volume, but again, sort of problematic because it's not a unified system, even though it has incredible scale at that point.
I love this slide. I think that this juxtaposition of the 2 potential outcomes is really interesting and helpful to think about, right? Like, I don't think that this gets talked about enough when we talk about going beyond the headline and creating clarity from all the chaos. This is a really helpful slide. All right, let's talk about the key content vertical.
All right. So this is what I teased it in the one before, right? So what kind of content is actually available with each one of these mergers? Netflix and Warner Brothers Discovery will be able to offer premium drama and film access, right? Very prestigious dramas and programming, but a low frequency of events, right? Those prestigious dramas don't have a deep library or 22 episodes, right? They're much less. So there'll be an ability to advertise an award-winning content, no doubt. But the kind of content you're going to be sort of able to advertise on, right? All great to advertise on Succession, right? But, what kind of, if you're a consumer product goods, what's the relevancy of advertising on highly prestigious show, right? So, premium drama and film, but, low frequency and relevancy remains elusive. For Paramount and Warner Brothers Discovery, you've got endemic content, you've got reality, and you've got live sports. And what that offers is what I like to call real sort of deep, sticky lifestyle content. Sticky because advertisers just love it. Food, home, eating, competition. Think about that. I mean, advertiser relevancy is very, very high there. A combined company here would really strengthen the live sport lineup, no doubt. I mean, locking up the March Madness, extended beyond just NFL to NHL. It rounds out the live sports library. And I would say this combined company would be a fierce competitor to the juggernaut of Disney's ESPN, no doubt, right? Because the breadth and depth that they can offer. It also creates authentic integration opportunities. We just talked about the sort of, could CPG be part of Succession? I can tell you from experience that for food and home and adventure, very easy to have a brand be part of that content, increasing your relevancy and in a very organic. So that's the opportunity from a content perspective for advertisers.
Awesome. Heating up. I think this is spicier than the news even really allows us to believe. This is exciting. All right. How about integrations and sponsorships?
Yeah. So again, I'm sort of building off that whole content question there. So for Netflix and Warner Brothers Discovery, I see very high touch integration and sponsorship opportunity, but again, limited spots there, right? So the focus is going to be on really premium product placement, very high dollar commitment, and the timeline for production is quite long, right? I think I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, but HBO Max just told us the location for the 4th season of White Lotus. And I can assure you that every premium brand out there is inundating them to say, how can we be part of this? They haven't started filming yet. That's that long production timeline I just talked about. So there's a scarcity of the inventory that limits the opportunity and increases the dollar amount for any integration and sponsorships. Paramount and Warner Brothers, on the other hand, have a tremendous amount of opportunity integration, even cross-platform, right? I love this idea of creating a cross-platform genre that an advertiser can be part of. If you wanted to lean into the genre of adventure, let's say, imagine being part of Survivor, one of the biggest franchises that Paramount has, and Shark Week, which is another sort of iconic annual sort of event that clients just love. So there's massive amounts of cross-platform opportunity there. The integration has a much lower price point than Netflix and Warner Brothers Discovery and a much shorter production timeline. We just do it more often, right? That goes to those endemic content shows that it's easier to be part of. And finally, for this Paramount and Warner Brothers Discovery, there's an abundance of what I like to call turnkey sponsors. There's just so many of them that you can own a show, you can own the first pod, you can own so many different opportunities that are in their library of ad products there. So again, high touch limited spots for Netflix and Warner Brothers Discovery, a lot of opportunity and ease of ships for Paramount and Warner Brothers Discovery, and a much more affordable way to go.
All right. Well, there's a lot to be excited about as an advertiser for both of these potential outcomes, a lot of challenges that they both present. We'll talk about the 5 must-ask questions here in a second. But this is probably the number one thing. After inventory, it's, did it make me money? ROI. How are we going to measure ROI?
So for Netflix and One Drug Discovery, no doubt there's a return on investment here. I just think it's minimal opportunity, right? I think it's great for luxury and high-end brands that are seeking prestige, right? It's just not going to work if you're a mass market kind of company that is looking for scale. So I think it might be difficult to grow a robust ad revenue from this combination, right? Especially when I compare it to Paramount and Warner Brothers Discovery, which I think has, from an advertiser, a very high opportunity for a return on investment. It's ideal if you're seeking scale. It's perfect for brands who are looking for that sticky, endemic content. And you really have an ability to tap into this excitement of live sports. Again, this combined company kind of seals the deal on a lot of different sports across the spectrum here. So again, I think an advertiser can be successful with either one of these. It's just, what kind of advertiser you are, and is there small opportunity or large opportunity here? You have to keep that in mind for all of these mergers and how it'll affect your business and your ability to connect with viewers and reach your internal advertising goals.
So these are the 4 tips that you've got for media buyers navigating M&A. And then we're going to look at the 5 questions. What are you advising brands and buyers? What are those 4 tips? What's on here?
I think we said this in the beginning. This is not going to be the last merger that's ever happening, right? So I would this where if last year was the year of consolidation, this year is the beginning of the mega mergers, right? So whenever you're faced with that, I think you have to remember these 4 things. The first is you need to prioritize data readiness, right? What do I mean by that? First party data is fantastic, but you can't just rely on that platform's first party data to ensure that you're going to get the most robust campaign. Make sure you can bring your own data to the table and combine it to reach those sort of viewers that are your most promising prospects from a sales perspective. So it's about data readiness. The second is what I'll call pivoting from volume to venture buying, right? So when you get a seat at the table, make sure that you have the ability to look into these prestigious tentpole or live events before the thing goes out of control, right? And that'll take some time. Lock in. They will probably want to give you volume. Look at this deep library, and that's great. And we can have a whole nother webinar on that. But where the excitement and the engagement is in what I call this venture buying, tentpole events, live events. Make sure that you can get in at the get-go when you're planning. The third tip is about embracing engagement standard. It's not about 30-second ads that you can run anymore. You have to make sure that your newly merged company will allow you to tap into any interactive and shoppable ads there, right? What is their ad stack? Their capability of doing this, because a 30-second ad just to increase brand name awareness is done. This has got to work harder, and you need to be able to make sure they have the technology available to make that happen, that engagement, rather than just, watching. And finally, what's going to happen is a newly merged company will have an entirely new user interface. And let's face it, as viewers, how many times did you go and say, where the hell is my show? That home screen is the most valuable piece of real estate in streaming. As people need to navigate through this new user interface, you need prominent position and ability to that on the screen, because that's when the decision happens. And how fabulous for your brand to be front and center on that exact decision phase. That's really where you break through and create a sort of well-rounded campaign. Be on that glass right away. Make sure you have an opportunity to do that.
That's awesome. Jean, speaking of front and center, we're going to bring those 5 questions up in just a second, but I want to take a moment for you to have an opportunity to talk about how you work with brands and buyers and publishers and platforms professionally. What's the focus of your work is extending content like this and education to teams and to companies that are really trying to navigate this. How does that work?
Yes, I really help. Having worked in advertising at an agency, at a pay TV provider, at networks, I have seen every possible point of view of streaming and advertising. I know what we need to do is create a really powerful go-to-market narrative. And that's what I help companies do. An ad tech company or a publisher or a platform, I help you understand where you fit in the media and streaming landscape. There's that unique brand promise that you can bring to market. And I really help create, powerful ad products that are do and make sense of it. Finally, what I really enjoy doing is helping companies internally make sense of all this. I run webinars like this. I do webinars all the time because there's so much data out there. It's chaotic. And what I love to do is take all of this and actually create it into a comprehensive format that people understand and feel empowered to take to market. At the end of the day, what I do, Tim, is I create sales materials that make your successful and more money into your company.
Yeah, it's something that everyone can appreciate, making it simple to sell more. All right. So making it simple to buy more, what are the 5 questions that we have to ask this year going into the upfront season? What are the questions on your mind for buyers to be asking?
Okay. So kind of plays off the 4 tips. I know there's 5 here, but I went into a little bit further here. So the first is that data independence question, right? You need to ask them, can I activate my first party data on your platform, or are we relying solely on your native targeting tools? This is super important, guys. As the ownership shifts, you need to safeguard your targeting consistency, right? You need to make sure that your data portability is protected in these campaigns. Ask them what the data independent qualifications are. Very, very important. The second is about the reach and the scale, right? Let's get on the key data I talked about earlier, right? What is the ad available subscriber base and impression supply that you're going to be able to tap into, right? After the merger, they need to blend total audience with clear visibility, right? You need to make sure that you understand what's available so you have the most accurate planning, guaranteed scale you need for any campaign. The third is what kind of content are you buying, right? That's locking those high affinity polls or events that you can lock in now before the price resets in the marketplace, right? Premium inventory is going to become competitive very, very quickly. Try to commit early so you can get the best value for that very premium content everybody's going to want to be part of. Fourth is the interaction standard, right? This is all about the ad tech stack that is available in this new company, right? Can it fully support interactive, shoppable, and outcome-driven formats? This is going to be one of the biggest continuation and evolvement of ad products in streaming. You have to make sure that this new company has an ad tech that is up to date and, dare I say, innovative. Go in there and ask them what their capabilities are. And finally, it is that real estate question. It's all about location, location, location. And for advertisers on streaming, that location is the home screen, right? You need to be on that home screen during their time of transition as people are discovering what kind of content's on there, because that is what I like to call the decision-making time. And if your brand can be there at that moment of selection, that's a win-win for you. So how can you be part of it? How are they carving out an opportunity for you on that home screen? So these 5 questions, I think, in a very crazy time for mergers, if you can go in with these 5, at the very least, you're going to be able to go back to your clients and say, hey, we've done everything we can to protect the data that we're bringing there. We're selecting content that's very engaging in formats that are interactive, and we're placing it on the most important screen in streaming. So I think if you can get good answers to these 5 questions, then you're going to have a very successful front situation.
Such a great point, Jean. Reinforcing the value that we bring as agencies, as buyers to our clients. We're asking good, thoughtful questions that are beyond this quarter's campaign. We're thinking about 12, 18, 24 months out. We're thinking about how can streaming be a pillar to your media strategy going forward. So this has been a great session. If folks want to get this, if you're watching and you haven't registered yet, there's going to be a link nearby. Go register. That's going to get your email to us so that we can get Jean's 5 must-ask questions to you. Jean, if folks want to get in touch with you, you're obviously here on LinkedIn, and that's linked close by, but you've got a very active Substack. Tell us about the other ways to get in touch and to connect with you.
So on Substack, I am the Streaming Strategy Scholar. I'd love for you to subscribe. It's free. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm very active there, or at carucciconsultants.com, which is the name of my consultancy agency. But please do connect with me on LinkedIn. I love to meet new people, new industries. But thank you, Tim. Thanks so much for the opportunity to come and sort of share my soapbox, so to speak, on mergers and acquisitions and how we can stay ahead of it.
We keep a whole bunch of soapboxes in the room in the back. So please, you're welcome anytime. This is obviously tremendously valuable content, and we're excited to help bring it to lots of folks today with you. So Jean, thank you. Audience, thank you for tuning in. This is our first LinkedIn Live. So if you enjoyed this, let us know, comment in the chat. That link will be close by. Make sure to go register so that we can share all of today's content with you. And we'll do this again soon. There's so much to talk about. I feel like we should do this more often. Thanks, Jean.
Thanks so much, Tim. I'm in. So let me know time.
Deal. Well then, we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.